A couple of months have passed since the destruction of the Galactic Patrol, and the once Saiyan squad has now turned into two Saiyan duos, the first being comprised of Raditz and Vegeta, the weakest member paired with the strongest member, that way the power is evenly distributed, leaving Nappa and Goku on their own two-man team. Now, as you might not have expected, the break wasn't for any personal reasons. Rather, they just realized they wouldn't be at their most efficient if they stayed as a four-man team. None of the missions they went on or planets they conquered required 4 Saiyans, especially not 4 Great Apes, so it only stood to reason that they make this separation, having 2 separate duos that can work at the same time on different missions, and usually complete them at the same rate. If they really needed to, they could also just join back together for even higher level missions, although that was rarely ever necessary. Everyone agrees this was the best decision to make, although Raditz is a little sad he doesn't get to see his baby brother all that often. And yes, Raditz is only 5 minutes older, but he does always hold that over Goku.
Yes, I'm brothers with the Kakarot. I heard he's made quite the name for himself. But I'm still older, taller, and handsomer, so show me even more respect than you would him.
We're brought to the space equivalent of an inn, a place where travelers can get some much-needed shut-eye or drink until they're full of warm and fuzzy feelings.
My comrade is right, but he'd also be the stronger brother if he stopped slacking off on training.
Somebody from across the bar would begin to laugh, stating that he knew about all of the misadventures of Goku and is actually indebted to him.
If you're really that guy's brother, then the next round's on me.
This line came from a hulking Namekian, someone who was taller than a full-grown Raditz, which isn't something you see every day in non-giant types.
So, Green Man, what did Kakarot do that you're so grateful for? She, my friend, he gave me a clear path to eternal youth, eternal life, and a little extra. Oh, really? And how's that? Well, he tore my homeworld asunder. But don't worry, I already tried that myself once, so I can't put it past him. He weakened all of their forces and left them near extinct, although he didn't retrieve their most valuable possession, the Dragon Balls. Wait, like the legendary Namekian wish orbs? It's the stuff of fairy tales. Well, then your mommy was reading you pure non-fiction, because they're as real as you and me.
The prince would then outstretch his arm, pointing 2 fingers at the large Namekian before using a laser beam to cave in the man's chest. The room would grow silent as what would come to be known as Lord Slug's body hits the ground. He lies there dead as a doorknob for a couple of minutes, before eventually rising from the grave and showing off the perks of immortality.
Well now, that wasn't very nice of you,
he says, stumbling to his feet.
Good, you actually did wake up. Now, how about you tell me where the Dragon Balls are? Now, why would I do that? You just tried to kill me, and if I'm not getting anything out of it, I'm certainly not going to tell you where they are just out of the kindness of my heart. Because, no matter how good immortality is, there's still one thing it can't save you from. Oh, really now? And what is that? Huh, I'm glad you asked. It's me. This is the true power of a Saiyan! Oh my! I'm sure your daddy must be very proud. Too bad I'll never get to tell him how much of a disappointment you really are. Low blow, Slug. And here I was thinking you wanted to be friends. Hey, if you can't rely on your friends to tell you how it is, then who can you? Alright, enough fooling around. Do you want to spar or not? I thought you'd never ask.
The two would then break into mortal and immortal combat, leading to a wonderful fireworks show from outside the Space Tavern. Sadly though, it was only a fireworks show for most of everybody there, since both of these fighters could take on the Ginyu Force by themselves. The only person who could really tell what was going on was Raditz, and even then he had a hard time keeping up. They were moving so incredibly fast. He could tell who was winning for most of the fight and get a pretty good gist of what was going on, but when it came down to precise movements, he was at a loss. Lord Slug was already an incredibly powerful fighter. being able to command his own squad similar to the Ginyu Force, and that was before he regained his youth. Now that he has, he's in an entirely different league, with a power level around 300,000. Surprisingly though, Vegeta is still able to keep up. For the last 6 months, almost non-stop, he's been training. Anytime he had off, he would train. Anytime he had on mission, he would make sure to take out as much people as possible, that way he could get a workout in. And any time he had when he was resting, he was doing mental training. That last part being especially important, since it means he's not going to end up as a blockhead who just keeps getting stronger like Nappa. Instead, he's also refining his technique, allowing him to bridge power gaps like he is right now. And even though Raditz is a slacker, the fact he still jumped in to help train every now and again did numbers for Vegeta. Since, like we said in Dragon Ball Super, 2 Saiyans sparring together is more effective than any other kind of training. But enough talking stats. How does the fight actually pan out? Well, it probably ends the same way most battles in Dragon Ball do, with a beam clash. But who wins that? Well, most likely Slug. He does have a higher base power, although I see things going a little differently. Vegeta would fire off his Gallic gun, as Lord Slug fires off his own version of the Masenko. As the beams meet, they would struggle for a little while, before then ultimately Vegeta's would come out on top. However, it has nothing to do with the attacks themselves, rather the people firing them. Slug wouldn't put anywhere near as much effort as Vegeta would into his blast. But why? Is it because he's immortal and cocky? No, it's actually because he killed his last squad. After attaining immortality, he knew they would want to use some of the wishes on the Dragon Balls for themselves. And while gathering the wish orbs, he would allow them to believe this was the case. After Porunga was stood in front of them, he would kill each and every one of his lackeys right away, not giving them the time to shout out a wish. He couldn't trust them. So after he attained immortality, he had nobody to do his work for him. And what's the point of living forever if you have to get your own hands dirty? You'll just spend an eternity bored as hell. So he decided to go out and scour the universe, trying to find people who he could recruit to be his new servants. It was actually the only reason he was at this tavern in the first place. So fighting Vegeta was just a means to an end. That end being to recruit the Saiyan Prince. All of this to say that Vegeta was spared from that final attack, that way he could be the newest lackey to the strongest Namekian. After the Gallic gun dissipates, Vegeta would prove victorious, but Slug would simply return back to life because of his immortality, then giving Vegeta the backstory on that technique like I just did for you. Now, obviously, the prince would question why he would willingly go along with any of this. Why would Vegeta want to be one of Slug's henchmen? And the answer is the Dragon Balls. As long as Vegeta proves to be a loyal soldier for the next decade or so, then he'll get his very own wish on the magical orbs. Whatever Vegeta's greatest desire might be, he can have it handed to him on a silver platter by Porunga. The only cost being he has to serve Lord Slug long enough for him to find some other worthy henchmen. And much to the surprise of the other Saiyan that's there, Vegeta would agree to this offer, walking over to Slug and shaking his hand, as the Namekian would then go and prep the ship for takeoff. Vegeta would then fly over to Raditz and whisper something into his former teammate's ear.
Listen, I don't trust the Green Man as far as I can throw him, so I need you to gather any information you can on planet Namek while I keep him busy.
Raditz would nod his head, and the two Saiyans break. Vegeta heading off with Slug, as Raditz stays around the tavern for a little while longer, reporting everything back to his other two teammates.
Guys, I know we did that whole split thing a while back, but Vegeta, he's been captured!
Raditz, if you woke me up for one of your pranks, I'm gonna kick your ass.
No, I'm serious. It was Namekian. He used the Dragon Balls to get immortality. Vegeta told me to find his own planet so we could use them too.
Then you should probably get on that.
No, you don't get it. This is serious. I need both of your help and...
Oh, come on, Nappa. You could have at least told him we were gonna help.
Yeah, but there's no point lying to the kid. How are you two even twins? He's so annoying and weak.
And what are you? Annoying and strong?
Exactly. Hey, wait a minute.
Anyways, I'm gonna send the coordinates for Namek over to Raditz. If the Dragon Balls are real, then Hey, we might be immortal soon.
Yeah, well, I'm heading back to bed. We still got a couple more days until we're at Metamore, or whatever it's called. The place with the weird people.
Isn't that what you call every planet?
Ugh. Only the ones with weird people.
Days later.
And the Saiyan duo arrives at Metamore. Thank you, Bailey, for recording that. My French narrator voice is awful. Now, yes, technically we have no way of determining what the Metamorans even look like or how they would behave, but we can make some educated guesses. Seeing as they have all sorts of very interesting techniques and powers, we can say they're somewhat similar to the Yardrats, except with a completely different skill set. Rather than focusing on deceiving your opponents and making yourself appear stronger than you are, they're very brute force fighters. Individually, they're not all that strong, with power levels not that much higher than humans, although they have magical abilities like the Fusion Dance, which is a technique that allows them to create a warrior far stronger than the sum of their parts. And it's been hinted at a couple of times that it doesn't just stop at 2 people, and could reach 20, 50, or maybe even 100. It really has no limit past what the Z-Fighters have already discovered. Now, considering Goku learned the Fusion Dance during his time spent in the afterlife, we can assume that not too many Metamorans still exist, which would also explain why we never actually get to see one. On that note, they probably look pretty similar to humans, considering just how well the Metamoran Fusion Dance works on human and human-like characters, such as the Saiyans. After arriving on planet Metamore, Nappa and Goku would try and stay under the radar. They did just get off of a very long flight and are adjusting to the atmosphere of this world. Not every planet's going to be just like Earth. Really, they're happy that most places have breathable air and that this one is no different. The Frieza Force does equip them with spacesuits just in case, although they make it really hard to move around, let alone fight. After checking the average power level of person on this planet, which isn't super high, as well as factoring in the total population, which is also pretty low, they decide to get to work, taking out small community after small community until eventually everybody on the planet understands what's going on and begins to band together. Now, pretty quickly they learn about the Fusion Dance and would try and make sure as many people as possible can't fuse. Although with so many different people trying to do it at the same time, a couple do slip through the cracks. Thankfully though, even when fused, they're not that strong. At least, at first. Now, the total number of people is probably in the low thousands to high hundreds range, which is still a lot, although after a Saiyan attack, that number dwindles down and fast. However, with only 130 people, they could still get in 7 layers of fusion, which would lead to an exponential increase that we can calculate but would still be massive. After hundreds of Metamorans sacrifice themselves to buy the others time, 2 warriors would be born to combat the Saiyans. Their names would be Heizuru and Nato, named after the strongest components in each fighter, since combining hundreds of names together would just be a mess. Each would have the combined combat skill of 250 different fighters, as well as having power far surpassing that. Once these 2 fighters are revealed, every other member of their race would have been slaughtered, although they hope, they pray it was worth it. After realizing just how screwed they might be, Nappa and Goku decide to create a Power Ball, allowing them to turn into the mighty Ozaru. They do it together, that way neither of them faces a major decrease in strength, and after throwing it into the air, burst open and mix, they would transform into the all-powerful Great Ape. Heizuru would take on Nappa, while Nato takes on Goku. And all things considered, they're pretty evenly matched. The only real difference is size, but that doesn't matter. Surprisingly, both Nappa and Goku are not only capable of facing the combined Metamoran might, but they're also stronger than Vegeta now. And I don't just mean in Great Ape, they're stronger than his base form, that'd be obvious. No, in terms of base-to-base power, they've actually succeeded the Prince. Now yes, Vegeta was doing everything he could to get stronger, although he rarely got the opportunity to spar with Raditz, and even when he did, Raditz is far weaker than the Prince, so it wasn't anywhere near as effective as it could be. Whereas Goku and Nappa are always training together. So not only are they getting that Saiyan boost, they're also neck and neck in terms of power, leading to the training being way more effective. But does this allow them to beat the Ultimate Fusions? Well, no. The Saiyans are strong, really strong, but there's no way they could have ever expected this level of opponent. Two people who were able to go toe-to-toe with their great ape states. Honestly, they thought they might be able to challenge Frieza soon, but if these guys are giving them a run for their money, well, they might have to rethink that. Although there is one thing the Metamorans couldn't have expected, which is just how long the Saiyans were able to fight for. With over a decade of experience and training on Goku's side, and far more than that on Nappa's, the Saiyans could go days, possibly even weeks, without eating, drinking, or sleeping, all if it meant that they would come out victorious. That was only amplified once they turned into Ozaru, and the Metamoran warriors just didn't have that luxury. Not only did their stamina drain way quicker, but they also had a time limit. One that was increased many-fold during multiple layers of fusion, although it could only last so long. Even if we say they get an additional 30 minutes per layer of fusion, they're still only getting about 4.5 hours extra at max. And that is a lot of time for a fight, unless you're going up against two battle-hardened Saiyans. The fused warriors might have an advantage in terms of strength and speed, although it was not severe enough to give them the opportunity to take out either of the Ozaru, especially as their stamina begins to whittle down, and after a couple hours, they start to divide back into hundreds of individual Metamorans. In a somewhat touching moment despite the context, Goku would use the move that Nappa taught him to turn the battlefield full of warriors into a glass floor. The Saiyan duo then reverts back to their base forms. Alright, get back to the ship. If Raditz was right, then looks like we're going back to Namek. In a galaxy not too far away.
Lord Cooler, sir! The scouts that we sent to Namek have reported back. The Saiyan was right. The Dragon Balls are there.
Thank you, Dory. Now, please, make sure Salza continues keeping this information out of my brother's hands. We wouldn't want him crashing our vacation.
Yes, sir.
Now, Nez, in case it wasn't obvious, set course for planet Namek at once.